When I came home from the hospital with my newborn twins, I saw a second fridge in the kitchen. "This one's for your stepdad and me," my mom said. "You buy food for yourself and the kids." I didn't argue. I just smiled, went to bed, and by morning, my stepdad was screaming. "Hello, dear friends. Please tell us in the comments which city or country you're watching from. It's always interesting to see where our viewers are. Enjoy the story." She drove slowly, as if the road itself refused to end. In the back seat, 2 baby carriers swayed with every turn. Bottles, wipes, and folded blankets filled the space where her old life used to be. 4 years in another city had felt like exile. Now she was heading home, to what was left of it. The small green sign read, "Welcome to Fairview County." Nothing felt welcoming. The trees were thinner. The houses looked newer. Even the air smelled different, cleaner, colder. She told herself this was just a visit. Show the babies, say a few words, keep the peace. Her mother liked peace, the kind where only her voice counted. When she turned into the gravel driveway, the house looked the same shape, but the color was wrong. Fresh paint, metal fence, new mailbox with a name that wasn't hers, Douglas, her mother's new husband. She pressed the doorbell. It buzzed once, harsh and short. The man who opened wasn't hostile, just indifferent. "Can I help you?" "I'm Claire," she said, "Margaret's daughter." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "You didn't call." "I didn't think I had to. This is still my home." He stepped aside without a word. Inside, the air smelled like lemon cleaner and someone else's life. The hallway had new furniture, gray and sharp. Family photos gone. The wall where her father's picture used to hang was bare. Then her mother appeared, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Blonde hair cut short, nails perfect, voice even. "Claire, you should have called first. You can't just show up with—" She looked at the carriers. "With them." "They're your granddaughters," Claire said quietly. "Yes, of course." The tone made the words sound like paperwork. Claire waited for a hug that didn't come. "Why didn't you tell me Dad died?" she asked finally. Her mother's face didn't move. "I didn't want to upset you. He passed last year." "Last year?" Claire's throat felt dry. "You thought I'd rather find out from a neighbor?" Margaret shrugged. "You were gone. You made your choice." Her stepfather, Douglas, cleared his throat, poured coffee, and handed a mug to Margaret before taking one himself. The quiet between them was married quiet, practiced and complete. "You're planning to stay?" he asked. "For a while," Claire said. "I need to figure things out." He nodded toward Margaret. "This place is hers now. She's been handling everything since your father passed." Claire's eyes found the corner of a manila folder on the counter, labeled Deed, Fairview Property. Her voice stayed calm. "You mean you two signed the house over?" "It's better this way," Margaret said quickly. "No confusion, no fights." Claire didn't answer. She carried the babies to her old room. The door creaked differently. Inside was no bed, no bookshelves, just stacked boxes labeled storage, old stuff, yard sale. One of the boxes had her handwriting on it. Someone had crossed her name out in black marker. She spread a blanket on the carpet, laid the twins down, and sat beside them. Her hands shook only once when she touched the floor and felt how cold it was. In the middle of the night, she woke to voices. Through the half-closed door, she heard them, Margaret and Douglas, talking low in the kitchen. "She can't stay long," he said. "She'll realize she doesn't belong here anymore," Margaret answered. "Just let her think it's temporary." "And the paperwork?" "Already done. We just need to move a few things before she starts asking questions." Claire didn't move. Her heartbeat was steady. It was the same tone she'd heard years ago when they'd talked about selling her father's workshop. Cold, practical, finished. She opened her phone, typed a note with the time, and wrote down every word she remembered. Then she took a photo of the folder on the counter through the crack in the door. Evidence starts small. At sunrise, Margaret stood by the stove, acting normal. "Breakfast is ready," she said. "After you eat, we'll talk about what comes next." Claire nodded once. She fed the twins, washed her hands, and looked around the room that used to be hers. The house no longer recognized her. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just decided whatever came next would be written down, dated, and saved. The return home was over. The defense had begun. The morning stretched thin and pale. Claire fed the twins in silence, spooning formula into 2 identical bottles, measuring each ounce like an act of control. Margaret moved around the kitchen with deliberate noise, opening drawers, closing cabinets, running the faucet longer than needed. Douglas read the paper, the rustle of pages loud as an argument. When Claire sat at the table, her mother placed a single plate in front of her. Toast, 1 slice, no butter. "You'll have to manage with what's here," Margaret said. "The pantry's not a grocery store." "I can buy my own food," Claire replied. "Just tell me where the nearest store is." "Town's changed, you'll get lost," her mother said, as if that settled it. The babies stirred. Claire stood to check them, and when she turned back, the folder on the counter was gone. She didn't ask where. She didn't need to. She took the twins outside to the porch. The morning light fell across the yard. Trimmed bushes, gravel paths, everything neat enough to suffocate. Her father's old shed was still there, but the windows were painted shut. The padlock looked new. She stared at it for a long time before going back in. Margaret was on the phone. Her voice dropped when she saw Claire. "Yes, she's here. Just for a bit. No, she doesn't have anywhere else to go. I'll handle it." Claire picked up one of the carriers. "I'll take the girls for a walk." "You don't have keys," Margaret said quickly. "I don't need them to walk," Claire said, opening the door. The street outside was quiet. A row of identical houses, porches with flags, the faint sound of someone mowing a lawn. Ordinary, but ordinary places can hide the ugliest things. She walked until her arms ached, then sat on a bench by the park. The twins slept. She opened her phone again, typed a message she'd been avoiding for months. "Hi, this is Claire. I don't know if you still have this number, but I could use advice." She sent it to Emily, her late husband's sister, the only person who had ever told her the truth without wrapping it in pity. The reply came 10 minutes later. "Where are you? Are you safe?" Claire typed, "Back in Fairview. Mother didn't tell me Dad passed. The house has changed. Something's wrong." Emily called instantly. "You should have told me you were moving," she said. Her voice was fast, practical, the way nurses talk in emergencies. "I thought it would be simple. Stay a few weeks, help Mom." Emily exhaled. "She forged something, didn't she?" Claire hesitated. "There was a folder, his name on it. It's gone now." "Then don't argue. Document. Keep notes. Dates. Times. What they say. You'll need proof before you even think of confronting them." "Proof for what?" "For when they try to erase you." That evening, Claire came back to find her mother rearranging the living room. "These boxes can't stay here," Margaret said. "We need space. Put your things in the garage." "They're already my things in the garage," Claire said quietly. Margaret's tone hardened. "Don't start. You've been gone for years. We built a life here." Douglas appeared from the hallway holding a set of folded papers. "You'll need to start paying rent if you plan to stay." "Rent? Utilities, food, upkeep," he said. "It's only fair." Claire looked at her mother. "Did Dad ever charge you rent?" Margaret's eyes flicked away. "That's not the point. You're not a child anymore." The twins began to cry in the next room, small, desperate sounds that broke the argument in half. Claire picked them up, rocked them, whispered their names like an oath. Later, when the house went quiet, she opened the hall closet and searched. Behind the coats, under a stack of table linens, she found an old file box. Her father's handwriting on the lid. Thin, careful letters. Property and wills. Inside, the folder from the counter. She opened it under the weak light of her phone. The signature on the last page stopped her. It was her father's name, but the loops were wrong, the spacing too tight. A forgery. Someone had practiced, but not enough. She photographed every page, one by one, sending copies to her email, to Emily, to a hidden drive. When she finished, she slid the folder back exactly as it was. In bed, she didn't sleep. She listened to the low hum of the refrigerator, the click of pipes, the creak of old boards. Every sound carried meaning now, every silence too. At dawn, Margaret knocked once and entered without waiting. "Claire, we need to talk." Claire sat up, calm. "Then talk." Her mother hesitated. "You can't stay forever. The house isn't set up for children. It's too much work." "I'll manage." "You don't understand," Margaret said, her voice tightening. "This place is mine. It's not your father's anymore." Claire looked at her. "Then why hide the papers?" Margaret's face didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. A flicker of fear. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do," Claire said. "And now I do too." Her mother's hand twitched on the doorknob. "Don't threaten me." "I'm not," Claire said evenly. "I'm taking notes." When Margaret left, Claire opened her phone again and typed, "Tuesday, 6 a.m. She said I don't belong here. Mention the house again. Tone hostile. Evidence saved." Outside, the sky turned gray. Inside, the house went quiet again, but the quiet no longer belonged to them. It belonged to her. That afternoon, Claire packed the twins into the stroller and walked to the edge of town. The sidewalks were uneven, the air sharp with the smell of dry leaves and rain. She passed the post office, the diner with the flickering sign, the law office with the dusty blinds. Fairview had not grown, it had shrunk. Even the trees looked closer together, as if watching her. Emily called again. "Did you find the will?" "I found something worse," Claire said. "You need to make copies, backups, and hide them outside that house." "I already did." "Good. And Claire, don't tell them you know. Not yet." The call ended. She pushed the stroller faster, the rhythm keeping her steady. In the grocery store, she bought milk, diapers, and a small spiral notebook. It would hold every word they said, every move they made. Paper was safer than memory. When she returned, Douglas's truck was gone. The front door was locked. Her key no longer worked. She stood on the porch until Margaret appeared behind the glass. "I changed the locks," Margaret said through the door. "Why?" "For safety. You can knock when you need something." "I live here." "Not anymore. We agreed it's temporary." Claire looked at her reflection in the glass, pale, tired, but not broken. "Then open the door," she said. Margaret hesitated, then unlatched the lock with a sigh that sounded rehearsed. Inside, the house smelled of bleach. The boxes were gone from the living room. "Where are my things?" Claire asked. "In the shed. We needed space." "The same shed that's locked?" "It's for your own good, dear. You get anxious when things are messy." Claire didn't answer. She fed the twins, cleaned the bottles, folded blankets. Every motion was deliberate, controlled. Margaret watched her from the hallway like a warden checking a prisoner. That night, when the house finally went dark, Claire slipped outside. The gravel crunched too loud under her shoes. She reached the shed and touched the lock. New, heavy, polished, brass. She pressed her phone light through the crack between the doors. Inside, her father's old workbench, the framed photographs, a cardboard box with her handwriting. The space looked smaller, as if the walls had moved in. She stepped back and noticed something near the hinges, a small metal camera, blinking red. She exhaled once and whispered, "Of course." Then she took a photo of it. Back inside, she wrote, "Hidden camera in shed, motion light, new lock installed, confirmed removal of personal items, no consent." The next morning, Douglas returned, cheerful. "Morning," he said. "I fixed the back fence." Claire looked at him. "And you installed a camera." He smiled thinly. "Security. These days you can't be too careful." "Did you record me last night?" "Only the property," he said. "Everything here belongs to us." She stared at him long enough that the smile fell away. "Delete it," she said. "You can't tell me what to do." "You'd be surprised," she said quietly. When he left the room, she went to her phone, opened the recording app and played the clip she'd made. His words were clear. Everything here belongs to us. At noon, Emily arrived. Claire hadn't called her, but somehow she knew. She walked in without asking permission, her heels clicking like punctuation. "So this is the place," she said, scanning the spotless kitchen. "Looks like a magazine, feels like a morgue." Margaret appeared, smiling tight. "We weren't expecting visitors." "I'm family," Emily said. "That still counts, doesn't it?" "It depends on whose family you mean," Margaret replied. Claire stood between them. "Emily's staying for lunch," she said simply. "Fine," Margaret said. "Just don't make a mess." They ate in silence. The twins slept in their carriers near the table. Emily spoke first. "I saw the papers you sent. The signature's fake. I can get a handwriting analysis if needed." Margaret's eyes snapped up. "What papers?" "Don't play dumb," Emily said. "You really thought no one would notice the difference." Douglas walked in mid-sentence. His face darkened. "What's going on?" Emily smiled. "Oh, just discussing property law. You should brush up." Margaret stood abruptly. "I want you out of my house." "It's not your house," Claire said calmly. "Not yet, anyway." Douglas took a step forward. "You need to go." Emily didn't flinch. "Touch me and we'll see how fast I file a complaint." Margaret's hands trembled on the chair back. "This is harassment." "No," Claire said, her voice steady. "This is accountability." Emily gathered her bag. "I'll contact a lawyer friend tonight. Keep every document, every message. Record them if they start again." She looked straight at Margaret. "You should stop now, before a judge tells you to." After she left, the house stayed silent. Margaret went to her room, Douglas to the porch. Claire sat alone at the table, staring at the clock on the wall. The only thing her mother hadn't replaced. It ticked softly, steady as breath. Later, she found an envelope on the counter. Inside, a note in her mother's handwriting. "If you want peace, leave quietly. Take what's yours and go. You'll only make it harder on yourself." She read it once, twice, then placed it flat on the table and photographed it. Another piece of the record. That night, she moved the twins into her old car and parked at the far end of the driveway. She didn't drive away. She just sat there, engine off, windows fogging. From the house came the faint glow of the living room, two silhouettes passing in front of it, arguing. She turned on the recording app again. The phone light blinked red in her hand, small but certain. If they wanted her gone, they'd have to do it on paper, and she would keep every page. The next morning, the air smelled like metal and rain. Claire woke stiff from the driver's seat, her neck aching, the twins stirring softly in their car seats. She wiped the condensation from the windshield and looked toward the house. Curtains still drawn, lights off, silence. The kind that comes right before movement. She waited until 7, then carried the babies back inside. Margaret was already in the kitchen, dressed, hair fixed, breakfast on the table as if nothing had happened. "You slept in the car?" she asked. "Yes." "That's not healthy for the girls." "Neither is lying," Claire said. Margaret didn't answer. Douglas came down the hallway, buttoning his shirt. He glanced at Claire, then at the twins. "Are you still here?" he said. "Until a lawyer tells me otherwise." He grunted, grabbed his coffee, and walked out the door. The screen slammed. Claire ate standing up, dry toast, cold milk. No one spoke. Then she carried the twins to the guest room, formerly a storage space, and began sorting what was left of her boxes. Every item told her how deep the betrayal went. Family photos missing, her father's pocket watch gone, the box of his letters ripped open and half empty. She made a list in her notebook. Items removed, likely destroyed, sentimental value, potential evidence of intent. Around noon, she heard the crunch of tires. A blue sedan parked by the gate. Emily stepped out, holding a laptop bag and a folder. "Morning," she said briskly. "I've got something." Inside, they sat in the kitchen. Claire poured instant coffee. Emily opened the folder. "Your mother and Douglas filed a property transfer last spring. The signature on your father's side doesn't match any record from his bank or insurance forms. It's close, but not close enough. I had a handwriting analyst confirm it last night. Claire looked at the printed samples. So it's real. It's proof, Emily said. Now we play it smart. No accusations, no fights. We document every interaction. We record everything said in this house. As if on cue, the front door opened. Margaret entered, heels sharp against the tile. "You again," she said to Emily. "Yes," Emily replied. "We're discussing estate matters." Margaret crossed her arms. "You have no right to interfere." "I'm family," Emily said evenly, "and Claire has every right to know what you've done." Margaret's voice dropped. "Watch your tone. You're in my home." Emily smiled slightly. "Actually, that's what the county will decide." Douglas appeared behind her carrying a stack of mail. "We got a letter from the bank," he said to Margaret. "They're asking for verification on the deed." He looked at Claire, eyes narrow. "Did you start something?" Claire said nothing. She took her phone and began to record openly, setting it on the table. "Say that again," she said. He froze. "What are you doing?" "Collecting evidence," she said. Margaret's expression hardened. "You're not allowed to record us." "Sure I am," Claire said. "This is a one-party consent state, and I'm one party." Emily almost smiled. She's learning fast. Margaret reached for the phone, but Claire stepped back. "Touch it, and I call the sheriff." "You wouldn't dare." "I would," Claire said quietly, "because I'm done asking permission." Douglas threw the mail onto the counter. "You're ungrateful. We kept this place alive while you were gone. You ran off after your husband died, and now you come back to take what isn't yours." Claire looked him straight in the eye. "You forged my father's name. That makes nothing yours." Silence. Margaret turned away first. "You always twist things. You always need someone to blame." "No," Claire said. "I need accountability." Emily folded the folder and stood. "We'll be in touch. There will be papers served." After she left, Claire took the twins for a walk again. The cold wind cut through her coat, but it felt clean. Her mind lined up tasks like soldiers, gather proof, contact attorney, prepare for eviction threats, secure temporary housing. The plan gave her balance. When she returned, the shed door was open. Inside, boxes were gone. Only the workbench and one photo of her father remained, glass cracked, frame bent. A single note lay taped to the wall. "Stop digging." She didn't touch it. She took a photo and backed away. That night, she moved her phone to record audio while she fed the twins. At 1:30 a.m., voices came through the wall. Douglas. "She's going to call the cops." Margaret. "She won't. She's too proud." Douglas. "You said she'd leave in a week." Margaret. "Then we'll give her a reason." The next morning, Claire drove into town. Emily had given her a contact, a family attorney named Janet Reynolds. The office sat above a hardware store, plain and quiet. Claire told everything: the forged signature, the recordings, the note in the shed, the threats. Janet listened without interruption, her pen moving fast. When Claire finished, Janet said, "First step, file a property hold request. It freezes any sale or transfer until the dispute is resolved. Second, a protective petition if harassment continues. Third, do not confront them without a witness. Ever." "How long will it take?" Claire asked. "A few days to file, a few weeks to process, long enough for them to make mistakes." Claire left the office lighter, but alert. She stopped by the church thrift shop to buy an old lockbox. Inside, she placed a flash drive, printed copies of documents, and her notebook. She hid it in the trunk under the spare tire. When she returned to the house, Douglas's truck was gone again. Margaret sat on the porch, sewing something that didn't need sewing. "Where were you?" she asked. "Out," Claire said. "You shouldn't disappear without telling me." "I'm not a teenager, Mom. Don't call me that when you're angry." "I'm not angry," Claire said. "I'm documenting." She went inside, locked her bedroom door, and set up the phone on the dresser, camera facing the entry. She looked straight into the lens. "Day 1, she said quietly, documenting threats, property interference, and manipulation. The recording light blinked. Outside, the wind shifted. Somewhere down the street, a siren echoed, short and far away. The twins slept soundly, unaware that their mother had just drawn the first real line. She opened her notebook and wrote, "Attorney retained. Case opened. Evidence secured. No more warnings given." Then she closed the cover, placed it beside her bed, and whispered the only promise that mattered now, one her mother would never hear. "You won't erase me again." The following days unfolded like a quiet siege. Claire woke early, fed the twins, brewed coffee, and wrote in her notebook before a word was spoken in the house. Every entry was time-stamped. Every interaction went into the record. It wasn't rage anymore. It was logistics. Margaret moved through rooms like a landlord inspecting property. She began labeling things with sticky notes: mine, ours, storage. Even the old kitchen clock got a tag. Claire peeled one off the baby bottles and threw it away. Douglas pretended indifference. He mowed the lawn twice a week, slammed doors, and hummed tunelessly whenever Claire passed. Once she found him at the mailbox, phone in hand, photographing her car's license plate. She stepped closer and lifted her own phone, filming him. He turned away, muttering. At night, the house creaked with strategy. She heard whispers through walls, the rustle of papers, the click of a latch. Nothing sudden, just pressure. That's how control works. Not by violence, but by small rearrangements until you forget what normal felt like. On Thursday, she drove to the courthouse to file the property hold petition Janet had prepared. The clerk's office smelled of dust and toner. She signed 3 copies, handed over the filing fee, and walked out with a stamped receipt that felt heavier than any weapon. A freeze order would hit the county database within 48 hours. Until then, her mother couldn't legally sell or alter the estate. She texted Emily a photo of the stamp. Done. Emily replied within minutes. Good. Now don't warn them. Let the system deliver the message. When Claire returned, Douglas was on the porch, sipping beer from the can, eyes half closed. "You're driving a lot," he said. "I have errands." "Lawyers, maybe?" She looked at him flatly. "You tell me." He smiled, small and mean. "Margaret thinks you're unstable. I think she's right." Claire raised her phone, started recording. "Repeat that." He stood, walked closer, the beer smell sharp. "You can't intimidate me with your gadgets." "You don't have to be intimidated," she said. "Just accurate." He went silent, turned, and threw the can into the trash with a hard clang. Inside, Margaret waited with a forced calm. "We need to talk about boundaries," she began. "Finally," Claire said. "I mean real boundaries. The babies cry all night. The neighbors are asking questions. You've upset the balance here." "The balance where you steal from the dead?" Claire asked. Margaret's eyes flashed. "You think you're righteous. You're just lost." "Maybe," Claire said, "but I'm lost with documentation." She turned, went to her room, and locked the door. That evening, her email pinged. An automated notification from the county clerk. Petition accepted, pending verification. The system had moved. She screenshot it, printed 2 copies, placed one in the lockbox, one behind the crib. At 10 p.m., the power flickered. Then the Wi-Fi dropped. She heard Douglas in the hall. "Router's acting up," he said through the door. "Don't touch it," she answered. A pause. Then softly, "You think you're smarter than us." "No," Claire said, "just faster." She waited until he went to bed, then used her phone's hotspot to send Janet a message. Possible tampering with internet. Security risk. The lawyer replied even at that hour. "Don't engage. Tomorrow I'll file for a temporary restraining order if harassment continues. Stay calm. Paper wins." The next morning brought new tactics. Margaret had invited a social worker. The woman arrived polite, clipboard in hand. "I received a report of unsafe conditions for infants," she said. Claire's pulse stayed steady. "Come in. You'll want to document this." She guided her through every room, clean bottles, fresh diapers, cribs aligned. The twins slept peacefully. The social worker noted everything, signed her form, and left with an apology in her eyes. Claire wrote, "False report. Possible attempt at intimidation. Documented witness present." By late afternoon, Margaret and Douglas avoided her altogether. The air between them held the tightness of a storm waiting for orders. Claire's phone buzzed again. "Janet. Judge approved preliminary protection. You're covered until hearing date. Sheriff will deliver notice tonight." At 7, a county car pulled up. The deputy, polite and efficient, handed Margaret a sealed envelope. "Ma'am," he said, "you've been served. Temporary protection order. No interference with property or dependents. Any violation will result in removal." Margaret's face drained of color. "This is a mistake." The deputy tipped his hat. "You can tell the judge." Claire stood behind him, holding one twin on her hip, watching the paper cross the doorway like a clean blade. After the deputy left, Douglas exploded. "You dragged police into this house." "No," Claire said quietly. "You did." He took a step toward her, but Margaret caught his arm. "Stop," she said. "Not now." Claire turned, carried the baby into her room, and closed the door. She heard them arguing, muffled, frantic. The word lawyer surfaced again and again, each time sharper. Later, she opened her phone and played the day's recordings, the clicks, the tones, the official voices, all orderly, unemotional. Proof doesn't need anger. It just needs time. She updated her notes. Order served. Behavior volatile. Maintain calm. Prepare relocation. Before sleeping, she called Emily. "They'll push harder now," Emily said. "You're cornering them." "I'm not fighting," Claire said. "I'm documenting." That's the fight. In the quiet that followed, the twins shifted in their sleep, their small breaths even. Claire listened until the house settled again. She imagined her father's voice somewhere in that stillness. Not kind, not gentle, just practical. "Hold the line." She whispered it once into the dark, like an oath. Then she set her phone beside the notebook, checked that the red light still blinked, and closed her eyes, knowing the walls finally carried her side of the story. The house went still after the sheriff left, but the silence had a different temperature now. Not peace. Pause. Claire felt it in the way doors opened slower, in the way footsteps hovered outside her room but didn't cross the line. She moved quietly, too, but not out of fear. She was calculating. Every day she recorded, backed up, labeled, and stored copies in 3 places. Her phone, a cloud folder, and a hidden USB in the twins' diaper bag. Her life had turned into evidence management. On the 3rd morning after the protection order, Margaret started playing the victim. She cried on the phone to relatives, loud enough for Claire to hear from the hall. "She's turned the law against me," Margaret said. "My own daughter. Can you imagine?" Then silence. Then a fake sob. Her husband's death broke her mind. "She's not stable. I'm scared for the babies." Claire waited until the call ended, then wrote in her notebook, "Mother staging distress calls. False claims. Possible witnesses. Neighbors, Johnsons, apartment complex manager on West Street. Call logs confirm." At noon, she received an email from Janet, the attorney. "Hearing date set for Thursday next week. Bring originals, recordings, any written communication." She printed the message, slipped it into a folder labeled Court. Her movements had become methodical, almost military. When one of the twins cried, she paused everything, comforted her gently, and resumed. It was discipline disguised as motherhood. That afternoon, Douglas followed her outside to the porch. He leaned against the rail, arms crossed. "You know, this doesn't have to get ugly," he said. "It already did." "You think a judge cares about your feelings?" "I'm not bringing feelings," she said. "I'm bringing documents." He smirked. "Paper doesn't scare me." "Then you haven't met the right kind." She turned, went back inside. His laughter followed her, brittle and short. By evening, Margaret had shifted tactics again. She made dinner, roast chicken, vegetables, and left a plate outside Claire's room like a peace offering. A note rested on top. "We're still family. Let's not ruin what's left." Claire photographed it, then tore it into 4 pieces and dropped them into the trash. She wasn't staging revenge. She was building a firewall. At night, she heard the front door open and close twice. Whispers, a car engine, then quiet again. She didn't move. Instead, she checked her camera feed. Small wireless models Emily had ordered and shipped overnight. One by the nursery door, one in the hallway. The screen showed Margaret and Douglas loading something into his truck. A flat box, wrapped in tarp. Claire zoomed in. It looked like her father's framed photo collection, the ones missing from the house. She recorded the clip, exported it, and sent it to Janet with one line: "Evidence of removal from property despite court order." The reply came 15 minutes later. "Excellent. That's a violation. I'll forward it to the sheriff first thing in the morning." When Claire woke, the truck was gone, but the kitchen smelled of panic. Coffee burnt, toast uneaten, voices low. Margaret's tone carried false calm. "They can't prove anything," she whispered. Douglas muttered something about misunderstanding. Claire walked in mid-sentence. "Good morning." Both froze. "Sleep well?" she asked. Margaret forced a smile. "You're documenting again, aren't you?" "Yes," Claire said. "Would you like to say that into the camera?" The rest of the morning passed in silence. By noon, a deputy returned, this time with a clipboard. He spoke with Margaret at the door while Douglas hovered behind her. Claire stayed out of sight, recording from her phone camera. She caught the deputy's voice clearly. "You're in violation of a standing protection order. Removing or destroying property listed in the hold petition constitutes contempt." Margaret's voice broke. It was sentimental. "Then you should have left it where it belonged," he said. After he left, Douglas slammed the door so hard a picture frame fell from the wall. It landed at Claire's feet. A photo of her as a child, her father holding her shoulders, both smiling slightly toward the camera. The glass cracked across their faces like a timeline. She picked it up, slid it carefully into a folder labeled "Recovered." Later, when the twins napped, she sat at the kitchen table and called Janet. "They'll escalate," the lawyer said. "It's predictable. They'll try to corner you before the hearing. Don't engage." "I won't," Claire said. "But I won't hide either." "That's fine," Janet said. "Just let the record speak louder than you do." That night, Emily arrived again. She didn't knock. She just appeared, wearing her old denim jacket, carrying her laptop. "You look like you haven't slept," she said. "I haven't," Claire replied, "but I'm organized." They sat together, scrolling through photos, documents, timestamps. Emily nodded slowly. "This is airtight. Even if they hire an attorney, it's over. You'll get control of the estate and the restraining order will stick." Claire stared at the folder names. "Then what?" "Then you move out. Start somewhere they can't follow." "I have nowhere else." "Then we'll make somewhere," Emily said. At 11, Margaret knocked. "I want to talk." Claire opened the door halfway. "About what?" "About forgiveness," Margaret said softly. "Your father wouldn't want this." "My father wanted honesty," Claire said. "You buried both." Margaret's lip trembled, but not from guilt, from frustration. "You've always been dramatic." Claire didn't answer. She just held up her phone. The recording light blinked red. Margaret turned and walked away. After she left, Emily leaned in. "That one will sting in court." At 2 a.m., thunder rolled outside. Rain hit the roof in steady sheets. Claire sat by the window, feeding one of the twins while the other slept. In the reflection, she saw herself, pale, hollow-eyed, calm. The face of someone who stopped waiting for justice to come and started building it. She whispered, "We're almost through it," though no one heard but the baby. On the desk beside her, the notebook lay open. Filed hearing. Violations logged. Emotional manipulation recorded. Maintain composure. A final line added itself almost on instinct, written without thinking. "The storm outside is temporary. The one inside is almost done. When she closed it, the thunder rolled again, longer, louder, but somehow less threatening than before. The hearing was set for Thursday at 9. From Monday onward, the house moved like a clock about to break. Margaret spoke less, Douglas drank more, and the space between them grew visible, like a crack under wallpaper. Claire stayed precise. No anger, no raised voice. She just waited. Each night she packed another small box. Clothes, documents, the twins' toys, a few dishes. She labeled them for transport. She didn't tell anyone where she'd go after the hearing. Not even Emily knew. Secrets were safety now. On Tuesday morning, she found the front door unlocked. The latch had been bent. Nothing inside looked disturbed, but instinct told her this wasn't carelessness. It was message work, the kind that says, "We can still reach you." She took photos, called Janet, and filed an incident report at the sheriff's office. The deputy who took her statement looked tired but kind. "They're trying to rattle you," he said. "Stay put. You've done everything right so far." That evening, Margaret tried again with her soft-voiced performance. She entered the kitchen carrying 2 cups of tea. "Let's not make fools of ourselves in court," she said. "Judges respect dignity. We can settle this quietly." "I'm not looking for a scene," Claire said. "I'm looking for truth." Margaret smiled, brittle and thin. "Truth is just memory with paperwork." Claire nodded slowly. "Good. Then I have plenty." Douglas appeared behind her, eyes bloodshot. "You're tearing this family apart." "There was no family left to tear," Claire said. He slammed his fist on the table, but she didn't flinch. "Touch anything in this house again," she said evenly, "and I'll have you removed before sunrise." For a moment, something in his expression shifted. Not guilt, but the beginning of realization that the script had changed. Wednesday night felt endless. The twins slept fitfully, picking up on the tension like air pressure. Claire sat by the crib, scrolling through her files, checking each timestamp twice. Her father's forged signature, the removal of photos, the recording of Douglas saying, "Everything here belongs to us," the false report to social services, each one a nail in the structure they'd built around her, each one ready to hold. At 3 a.m., she heard a sound outside, a slow crunch of gravel under tires. Headlights swept the windows, paused, then cut off. She reached for her phone, hit record. The front door creaked. A hand tried the knob. Then silence. After a long minute, footsteps retreated. She waited another 10 before moving. She typed, attempted entry. Vehicle dark blue pickup. Time 3:17. Possible Douglas. Recorded partial audio. By dawn, her body felt carved out of static. But she dressed neatly, pressed her clothes, and packed a small bag. 2 bottles, diapers, a spare blanket. The twins went into their car seats, still drowsy. She drove to the courthouse early, engine humming like a promise. The courtroom was small. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of paper and coffee. Margaret and Douglas sat on one side with a lawyer who looked bored. Emily sat beside Claire, laptop open, posture steady. Janet arrived moments before the session, sliding a stack of binders onto the table. The judge entered, old and sharp-eyed. "Let's make this brief," he said. "Property dispute, temporary protective order, alleged forgery." Margaret started the performance immediately. "Your Honor, my daughter is unstable. She fabricated—" Janet rose smoothly. "Your Honor, may I submit Exhibit A?" She handed over the forged deed, the authentic samples, and the analysis report. Independent forensic confirmation of falsified signature. The judge adjusted his glasses. "I see." Douglas leaned forward. "We didn't know—" "Exhibit B," Janet continued, "is a recording of Mr. Douglas stating that everything here belongs to us, recorded lawfully." The judge pressed play. Douglas's voice filled the room, casual and arrogant. The silence afterward had shape. Margaret's lawyer cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could reach a private agreement." The judge cut him off. "Not today." Then came the violation evidence, the video of the shed, the deputy's report, the late-night attempt at entry. Claire watched her mother's expression crumble by degrees, each fact chipping away the structure of control she had lived behind. Finally, the judge spoke. The forged transfer invalidates the deed. The property reverts to the estate until proper probate. Mrs. Douglas, you are hereby restricted from contact or interference with the petitioner or her dependents for 6 months. Enforcement effective immediately. Margaret whispered something. Maybe a plea, maybe a curse. But the judge didn't look up. The gavel came down like punctuation. Outside, the air felt too bright. Claire stood on the courthouse steps holding the twins. Emily hugged her once, brief and solid. "You won," she said. "No," Claire replied. "I survived." They drove back in silence. At the house, a sheriff's car was already parked. 2 deputies supervised while Margaret and Douglas packed their things into boxes. No shouting, no chaos, just procedure. Claire stayed by the gate, not gloating, not even relieved, only finished. When they were gone, she entered the house slowly. The rooms felt hollow. She went to her father's old chair, the only object that hadn't moved. Dust lined its arms. She sat down, closed her eyes, and let the quiet settle. The twins woke and began to cry softly. She smiled, not joy, not triumph, just the small, plain certainty that everything left was hers to rebuild. That evening, she wrote her final entry in the notebook. Court resolved, property secured, threat neutralized, no further contact expected. Rebuilding phase begins. Then she turned the page and wrote one more line without planning it. Freedom doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives with paperwork, silence, and a locked door that only opens from the inside. She placed the notebook on the table next to the keys and watched the sunset spill through the kitchen window. The same light, the same house, but finally, her own. The house was hers now, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like aftermath. The air too still, the rooms too clean, the kind of silence that follows years of noise. The first morning alone, Claire woke before the twins. The sky outside was the pale gray of a paper yet to be written. She walked barefoot through the house, touching walls, opening cabinets, taking inventory of what was left. The quiet wasn't empty. It was waiting. She started with small things, opened windows to let out the smell of bleach, took down every sticky note her mother had placed. Mine, ours, storage. She threw them into a trash bag, one by one, until only bare surfaces remained. When she reached the kitchen clock, she hesitated. The note was gone, but the tick still sounded like her mother's voice, precise, critical, unstoppable. She took the clock off the wall and left it on the porch. Later, she called Emily. "It's done," she said. "I saw the court report," Emily replied. "They're not coming back. The sheriff made that clear." Claire looked out at the yard. "I don't want to live here." "You don't have to," Emily said, "but stay for a bit. Let it stop echoing." The next few days became routine. Feed the twins, clean, document small repairs, call the utility company to transfer accounts. The practical work grounded her. She treated it like evidence of life continuing. Still, at night the house carried memories. A drawer she opened by reflex and found empty. A faint smell of her father's tobacco under fresh paint. The outline of a picture frame on the wall where sunlight had faded the color. Every mark was a ghost of something unspoken. On Friday, she found a letter in the mailbox with no return address. The handwriting was familiar, slanted, neat, deliberate. Her mother's. Inside, just one line. "You will regret turning blood into paperwork." She read it twice, then slid it into a plastic sleeve and labeled it Post-Verdict Correspondence. Threat. Implicit. The folder went into the lockbox. She didn't feel anger, only confirmation. That evening, she sat on the porch while the twins slept. The sun dropped behind the trees, leaving the sky streaked with red and silver. Emily arrived with groceries and coffee. "You look calmer," Emily said. "I'm tired," Claire answered. That's not the same thing. Maybe tired is the first step. They ate quietly, two women who had run out of dramatic words. After a while, Emily said, "You could sell this place. Start somewhere clean. I'll help with listings." "I will," Claire said, "but not yet." "You want to hold on to it?" "No," Claire said. "I want to close it properly." The next morning, she began sorting her father's old belongings in the shed. The smell of dust and oil felt honest, like something that didn't pretend. She found a small wooden box labeled personal. Inside were photographs. Her father at 20, her mother beside him, Claire as a child on his shoulders. Time frozen before decay began. She scanned each picture, cataloged them, and sealed the originals in an envelope. Nothing sentimental, just preservation. By afternoon, she had cleared half the shed. Tools hung in even rows, floors swept, boxes stacked. The process was mechanical, but inside it was something like peace, not joy, but alignment. At dusk, she heard a car slow near the gate, a white sedan. It didn't stop, just lingered a moment, then rolled away. She noted the plate number automatically, wrote it down later, then deleted it. Not every movement needed to be stored anymore. When night fell, she poured herself a single glass of wine, the first drink she'd allowed in months. She sat by the window with the notebook open, reading her own handwriting. The early entries felt like another person had written them, tense, cornered, exhausted. The later ones were leaner, colder, steady, evidence of evolution. She took a pen and wrote a new entry. Week 1 after judgment. Silence holds. Repairs underway. No contact from Margaret or Douglas. Sleep improving. She paused, then added, "I'm beginning to understand what safety sounds like. It has no footsteps." Days passed. The twins started smiling more, the way babies do when the air around them finally stops carrying tension. She laughed once, quietly, unexpectedly, and startled herself. It wasn't happiness, it was release. On Sunday, she visited the cemetery for the first time since returning. The grass was trimmed, the headstones damp with morning dew. Her father's name was carved clean and deep. She placed her hand on the stone. "I handled it," she said, "the way you would have, with paper, not fists." She stood there for a long time, until the wind picked up. When she turned to leave, she saw Margaret's name freshly carved on a nearby headstone. For a second, her chest tightened. But then she saw the dates. Another woman, another family. The fear passed. Still, it made her walk faster. Back home, she made a decision. She called a realtor. "I want to list a property in Fairview County," she said. 3 bedrooms, good condition, immediate sale." "Do you have a timeline in mind?" the agent asked. "Yes," Claire said, "as soon as legally possible." The process began again. Paperwork, signatures, notarization. A different kind of battle, but one she understood. She filled each form carefully, making sure every name, every date, every line belonged to her and her alone. In the evening, she fed the twins and packed the last of the unnecessary items. She stood in the middle of the living room and took a single panoramic photo, not as evidence, but as closure. Then she wrote one final entry. The house was never haunted. It was just full of noise. Now it's quiet. Tomorrow begins elsewhere. She closed the notebook, slid it into a box labeled records, and locked the front door behind her. Outside, the air was cool, carrying the scent of rain and soil. The twins slept in their car seats, and for the first time, she didn't look back. The headlights reached the end of the drive, and Fairview faded into shadow. No revenge, no applause, just motion, steady, forward, unrecorded. The highway out of Fairview stretched long and empty, a gray ribbon under the white sky. Claire kept the car steady at 50, her hands calm on the wheel. The twins slept in the back seat, their small heads tilted in opposite directions like punctuation marks at the end of a long sentence. She hadn't planned where to go, only away. The GPS showed a blue line leading south, toward towns she didn't know. She passed fields, gas stations, and billboards for antique shops. Every mile put more air between her and the house that had pretended to be home. By noon, she stopped at a diner outside of Harlan, a quiet town with one main street and a water tower that said, "Welcome Home" in fading paint. She ordered black coffee and a sandwich. The waitress smiled at the twins and said, "Beautiful girls, you moving or visiting?" "Moving," Claire said. "Lucky town," the woman said, not knowing how strange that word sounded to someone who'd spent months inside luckless walls. After eating, she found a small rental office near the courthouse. A man behind the counter handed her a list of available houses. "Something short-term," she said. "Furnished, safe, quiet." He nodded. "Plenty of quiet here. Too much, some say." "That's fine," Claire said. "I've lived with noise." By evening, she signed a 3-month lease for a 1-story house at the edge of town. 2 bedrooms, pale blue walls, a fenced yard. The landlord gave her the keys and said, "The neighbors keep to themselves. You'll like it." She moved in that same night. The furniture smelled faintly of pine cleaner. The floors creaked softly. It felt uninhabited in a kind way, like a space waiting to be filled rather than conquered. She set the twins' cribs in the second room, unpacked only the essentials, and sat on the floor surrounded by boxes. For the first time in months, she cried, not loud or dramatic, just silent tears, mechanical, like the body emptying excess weight. When it was over, she felt lighter. The next morning, sunlight came through bare windows. She brewed coffee and stood outside barefoot, feeling the cool boards under her feet. No cars passed, only the sound of a dog barking somewhere distant and birds that didn't care who lived or left. She called Emily. "I made it," she said. "You sound different." "I think I am," Claire said. "Fairview is in the past now." "Yes," Claire said. "I left the paperwork behind, too. Not the copies, just the anger." For a week, life shrank to essentials. Feed the babies, take walks, cook simple meals, sleep. No recording, no documenting, no strategizing. Her body still reacted to sudden noises. A knock, a door creak, the hum of a car engine. But the reflexes dulled. She learned to breathe again without waiting for interruption. One afternoon, she went into town for groceries. Near the checkout, she saw a small community board, local photography class, beginners welcome. She stared at it for a while. Her father had loved cameras, old film ones with weight and patience. She tore off a tab with the instructor's number. That night she called. A woman's voice answered, "Marianne." "I saw your ad," Claire said. "Do you still take new students?" "We do. Sundays at the library. Bring any camera, even a phone." "I'll be there," Claire said. The class was small. 6 people, all ordinary. A retired man, 2 teenagers, a nurse, a mechanic, and Marianne, who taught like someone who believed that light was proof of existence. Claire borrowed an old digital camera from the library and listened more than she spoke. By the 3rd week, she started taking photos during her walks. The twins sleeping in their stroller, shadows of trees on pavement, reflections in puddles. The images weren't artistic. They were records of stillness, proof that the world kept moving even when people didn't. Marianne noticed. "You frame things like evidence," she said. Claire smiled faintly. "Old habit." "Keep it," Marianne said. "Truth has angles, too." Each evening she organized the photos into folders labeled by date, not theme. No captions, just time and place. The honest way to remember. Then one morning in late spring, an envelope arrived. Official paper, county seal. Her pulse jumped before she even opened it. Inside was a letter from Janet, her lawyer. Case closed. All claims resolved in your favor. No appeals filed. Estate fully transferred to your name. Below, Janet had written in pen, "Congratulations. Don't send me any more evidence. You're free now." Claire sat down, reading it again. The word free felt unfamiliar, like learning to speak without measuring tone. She folded the letter carefully, slid it into a drawer, and didn't label it. That evening, she drove to the lake at the edge of town. The water was low, calm, tinted orange from the setting sun. She stood there barefoot, the twins in a blanket beside her, and let the quiet reach every corner of her mind. She thought of her father, his hands steady when he fixed things, his voice when he said that control wasn't power, it was patience. She thought of her mother, too, not with rage, just with distance, as if the woman had become a character in a story she once read and decided not to finish. Claire took a photo of the lake, the twins, the light. No filters, no framing tricks, just a record of a moment untouched by conflict. She saved it in her camera with the other files but didn't title it. Back home, she wrote her first journal entry in weeks. New town. No threats, no cameras running. Sleep deep. The air doesn't wait for proof anymore. She paused, then added, "Sometimes surviving isn't about winning. It's about deciding when to stop collecting evidence." The following days passed without incident. The realtor called to confirm the Fairview house had been sold. Quietly, cleanly, no complications. The check arrived by mail a week later. Claire deposited it, paid the last of the legal bills, and used the rest for the twins' trust account. On Sunday, she returned to the lake. The sky was overcast, wind soft. She raised her camera, took one picture of the horizon, then lowered it. Enough. That night, before bed, she deleted every recording, every folder labeled evidence. Only the photos of the twins remained. In the quiet after the deletion, she felt no fear, only the certainty that the past was now a closed file. She turned off the light, listened to the twins' breathing, and whispered into the dark, not as a note, not as proof, but as a simple statement to the universe that had finally stopped watching. "I'm home." The first summer in Harlan arrived slowly, almost shyly. Rain tapered off, and the trees around Claire's small rental house turned a clean, hard green. The air smelled like grass instead of bleach. She began marking time not by court dates or phone calls, but by the small rituals that built themselves into habit. Morning walks, grocery lists, the sound of the twins' laughter bouncing off kitchen tiles. Each day looked ordinary, which was the point. She'd spent too long living inside extraordinary tension. Now the challenge was to learn how to live without it. She worked part-time from home, proofreading insurance documents for a local firm. The job was quiet, repetitive, predictable. Every line a rule, every rule measurable. She liked that. It gave her brain something neutral to count. Once a week, she went to the photography class at the library. The others started calling her the quiet one, though by the second month she was laughing at jokes, giving tips about composition, even showing Marianne her growing portfolio. Most of her pictures were of light, the way it fell across furniture, grass, skin. Light didn't judge, it only recorded. One Sunday after class, Marianne said, "You should display some of these. We're hosting a local exhibit next month." "I'm not a photographer," Claire said. "You are," Marianne replied. "You just don't sign your work yet." The idea made her uneasy, but she agreed. She chose 6 photos, all simple. The twins' hands, the reflection of clouds in a puddle, a window cracked open to sunlight. She printed them on matte paper, no frames, no captions. At the exhibit opening, she stood quietly in the back while people drifted from piece to piece. A woman pointed at one of her photos and said, "It feels safe." That word hit harder than any compliment. Safe was something earned. Later, Marianne found her and said, "You could start doing commissions if you wanted." "I just like observing," Claire said. "Observation is the purest form of creation," Marianne answered. That night, Claire walked home through the warm air, carrying the twins asleep in their stroller. She passed rows of small houses, lights in windows, the smell of dinner, ordinary peace. No one knew her history here. That anonymity was better than forgiveness. When she got home, she opened her email and saw a message from Janet. Estate finalization complete. Accounts closed. No further correspondence from opposing parties. You're legally finished. She stared at the words for a long time. Legally finished. It was the only closure she trusted. She printed the message, folded it once, and placed it at the bottom of a drawer she never opened. In August, she signed a lease for a year on the same house. The landlord said, "You're quiet tenants. Stay as long as you want." She smiled and said, "I might." The twins began walking that month, small, uncertain steps that seemed to contain all the fragile courage she'd lost and found again. She took a photo of their first steps on the porch, then another of them falling into her arms. When she looked at the image later, she noticed her own face, unguarded, tired, but alive in a way she hadn't seen before. One afternoon, while sorting laundry, she found the last unopened box from Fairview. She hadn't meant to bring it. Inside were documents she already had copies of. The original court files, old notes, timestamps, receipts. The physical weight of her past, reduced to paper. She carried it outside, dug a shallow pit at the edge of the yard, and burned it. The smoke curled upward, gray, then clear. She stayed until it was all ash. No drama, no symbolism, just cleaning. That evening, she wrote her first journal entry in months, burned the paperwork, kept the copies in memory, realized I don't need proof of survival. Living is proof enough. A week later, the county fair came to town. Emily drove in from 2 hours away with her husband and their son. It was the first time Claire had seen her since the court hearing. They met at a picnic table under the lights. "You look different," Emily said. "I sleep now," Claire said. "That'll do it." They spent the day watching the twins chase bubbles and eat ice cream, laughing until the air grew thick with dusk. Before leaving, Emily said, "You built a life out of wreckage. That's something." "I built it out of evidence," Claire said with a small smile. "I just stopped labeling it." In September, Claire started volunteering at the library, helping organize the community photo archive. It was mostly old pictures of streets, buildings, families no one remembered. She cataloged them, digitized them, wrote short descriptions. Each image, frozen proof that something existed even after everyone forgot. Sometimes she'd pause on a photo of an anonymous woman, 1950s haircut, standing beside a house that no longer existed, and wonder what kind of silence that woman had lived through. By October, the leaves had turned. The twins played in piles of them, shrieking with laughter. Claire stood at the window watching, camera forgotten on the table. She realized she didn't need to capture it. The moment was already safe inside her. That night, she opened her old notebook, the one that began with numbered evidence. She read the last few lines, then added a new one. Evidence closed. Case dismissed. Peace granted. She looked around the quiet house, a rented place that had turned into home by accident. Nothing about her life was dramatic now. No one was watching. No one was judging. Before bed, she stepped outside again. The air smelled of rain and soil, just like the night she left Fairview. But this time, the darkness didn't press in. It opened outward. She whispered into it. Not a promise, not a record, not an oath. Just a sentence that belonged to no file and no judge. "I made it this far, and that's enough." Then she went inside, turned off the lights, and slept without fear. Her body finally catching up to the truth her mind had already signed. Case closed, life ongoing. Winter arrived without announcement. One morning, frost coated the windows, and Claire woke to the sound of her own breath in the cold room. The twins had grown enough to climb from their cribs and wander to her bed at dawn, small feet against wooden floors, soft voices calling her name. She wrapped them in blankets, started the heater, and made oatmeal. The rhythm of it all, the spoon scraping the pan, the hum of the radiator, the small voices asking for more milk, had become her proof that the world still worked when no one interfered. By mid-December, her days were an organized map of ordinary things: breakfast, cleaning, proofreading work, walks to the park, grocery runs. Routine was her chosen therapy. The past existed like a sealed archive, accessible but irrelevant. The Fairview house had sold months ago, but she still received one last piece of mail forwarded from there. A Christmas card. No return address, but she knew the handwriting. Margaret's. Inside, 3 words written in perfect pen strokes. I still remember. Claire read it once, then tore it into even strips and dropped them in the trash. She washed her hands, made tea, and moved on. That night, she added a new page to her journal, received one final letter, filed it under Nothing Left to Prove. In January, the library announced a new community project, a digital collection of personal histories from local residents. Marianne asked if Claire would join the committee. "You're good with records," Marianne said. "You understand preservation." "I used to," Claire said, smiling faintly. "Maybe it's time to use it for something that doesn't hurt." The project began small. Interviews, scanned photos, audio notes. Claire handled documentation. She wrote short summaries, plain, factual, clear, dates, names, locations. She found comfort in the structure. Every story she typed had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It reminded her that endings didn't have to mean collapse. One afternoon, while cataloging a recording of an elderly woman describing her childhood, Claire realized she was listening without tension. Her muscles didn't tighten. Her pulse didn't spike. The woman spoke about family arguments, lost property, estranged siblings. And Claire just listened, detached, not triggered. Healing had no ceremony. It just arrived quietly, disguised as indifference. In February, the twins turned 2. Emily visited again, bringing small presents and too many balloons. They sat on the floor eating cake while snow fell outside. "You've built a fortress out of normal life," Emily said. "I prefer a garden," Claire said. "Fortresses need enemies." "Then what's next?" "Nothing dramatic," Claire answered. "Just continuity." The following week settled into a pace she didn't have to manage. She went to work, attended the photo class once a month, and helped with the community archive. She even started leaving her phone in another room, something unthinkable a year before. Silence had stopped being a threat. One evening in March, she found herself driving without purpose. The twins were asleep in the back, and the road curved toward Fairview. Instinct made her slow at the old highway exit. She didn't take it. She only watched the sign slide by, a green rectangle fading into distance. That was enough. Back home, she looked at her reflection in the dark window. The woman staring back was calm, older, ordinary. Her expression didn't demand proof. That night, she wrote, "Freedom isn't loud. It's the absence of monitoring. I used to live for the red recording light. Now I live for when nothing blinks." By spring, she had stopped counting months. The twins grew taller, louder, curious about everything. She taught them small things: how to hold a spoon, how to say thank you, how to wait for quiet before crossing a street. The lessons she'd learned painfully were turning into instructions for calm survival. One afternoon, while they napped, she went through her old storage box again. Only one item remained: the notebook from Fairview, its spine worn, the first page dated over a year ago. She read a few entries, precise, cold, procedural. Evidence catalogs written by someone living in survival mode. She closed it halfway, then tore out the last page she'd written months earlier. "I made it this far, and that's enough." She pinned it to the wall above her desk, not as reminder, but as confirmation. That night, she dreamed of the Fairview house. Not the version filled with conflict, but an earlier one. The sound of her father's tools, the smell of rain through an open window, the echo of footsteps she used to trust. When she woke, she wasn't shaken. She wrote, "The mind returns to safe rooms when it's finally safe to visit them." April came with color: daffodils along fences, children shouting after school, the smell of wet earth. She photographed nothing. Some things didn't need proof. When the library held a small event for the archive project, Marianne asked her to speak. Claire almost refused, then agreed. She stood before a small group, locals, teachers, teenagers, and said, "Stories don't save people, but they organize the noise. They give pain a start and a finish." She didn't mention herself. She didn't have to. Afterward, a young woman approached her. "How do you know when a story's finished?" she asked. "When you stop needing witnesses," Claire said. That night, she walked home under a wide spring sky, the air smelling of rain and lilac. The twins were asleep, the lights in her small house warm. She paused at the gate, looking at the window glow, and realized she no longer expected anyone to be watching from behind it. She wrote one last entry before bed. "The past doesn't haunt me. It waits quietly, archived, accessible only by choice. The evidence has turned into memory, the memory into instruction, the instruction into quiet." She closed the notebook, turned off the lamp, and felt the small, perfect weight of peace, unrecorded, unrepeatable, finally her own. Summer returned for the second time since she'd left Fairview. The season carried no drama this year, no trials, no deadlines, no letters that made her chest tighten, just the smell of warm soil, the drone of insects, and the sound of her daughters running barefoot in the yard. The small house in Harlan had become something resembling permanence. The walls held new frames, pictures from the photography group, drawings the twins made with messy crayons, one of the lake where she had stood on her first night in town. No evidence, just fragments of life that didn't need context. Claire now worked part-time at the library itself, not as a volunteer, but on payroll, cataloging books, maintaining the archive she had helped build. The routine suited her. She liked the smell of old paper, the quiet murmur of pages turning. It was a job built on order, and order was the closest thing to peace she trusted. Sometimes people recognized her from the small local exhibition. They'd say, "You're the one who takes photos of light." She'd nod politely, uncomfortable with being known for something as soft as that. One afternoon, a high school girl who helped with the summer program asked her, "Why do you always photograph ordinary things?" "Because ordinary things don't lie," Claire said. The girl tilted her head. "But they're boring." "They only seem that way until you've lived without them," Claire replied. At night, she still wrote. Not reports or documentation, just short notes about the day. What the girls said, what color the sunset was, what she cooked. The writing didn't serve as defense anymore. It served as proof of continuity. Emily called once a week, though their conversations had grown shorter. The crisis that had once glued them together had faded, and what remained was simple friendship. "You ever think about visiting?" Emily asked one evening. "No," Claire said. "Closure?" "Distance," Claire answered. "Closure sounds like something you need permission for." Emily laughed softly. "You always did like choosing your own words." In July, Claire took the twins to the county fair again. They rode a small carousel, ate cotton candy, and fell asleep in the car before the fireworks. Driving home through the warm night, Claire caught her reflection in the rearview mirror, a face calm, sun-tired, faintly smiling. For the first time, she didn't look like a witness. When they got home, she carried the twins inside, one at a time, and stood in the doorway a moment longer than usual. The house smelled faintly of detergent and air freshener, the kind of clean that didn't hide anything. Later, sitting at the kitchen table, she opened the old notebook again. Only a few blank pages were left. She flipped through entries that had once sounded urgent: threat, violation, petition filed, and realized they read now like records from another life. On the last empty page, she wrote, "The story didn't end when the court closed. It ended when I stopped needing the past to make sense. Peace isn't forgiveness. It's the absence of strategy." She left the notebook open on the table overnight. In the morning, sunlight reached it first. By August, the twins had begun preschool. On their first day, she took them by the hand to the small brick building down the street. Other parents stood around smiling, waving, adjusting backpacks. Claire stayed quiet, watching her daughters walk into the classroom without looking back. She didn't cry. Her chest felt full but steady. The teacher, a young woman with kind eyes, asked, "Are you new in town?" 2 years, Claire said. "Feels longer. You look settled." "Maybe I am," Claire replied. When she returned home, the silence felt different. Not empty, but earned. She brewed coffee, sat by the window, and let the hours unfold with nothing demanding her attention. No notifications, no calls, no waiting for a door to slam. Around noon, she walked to the post office. Inside her box was a small envelope postmarked from another state. No name. Inside, a check for a small sum, a leftover inheritance payment from the estate, processed late. She laughed quietly, almost in disbelief. Even the bureaucracy of the past was still trying to reach her. She endorsed it, deposited it online, and forgot about it before dinner. That evening, she and the twins watched a thunderstorm roll over the hills. The girls shrieked each time lightning flashed, then clapped when thunder followed. Claire counted the seconds between flash and sound, a habit from her father. She told them, "That's how far away the storm is." "How far?" one of them asked. "Far enough," Claire said. When the power flickered, she lit candles and let the twins draw on scrap paper. Their laughter filled the house louder than the rain. She thought about how a year ago she would have documented the blackout, written down the time, maybe even recorded proof that the power returned. Now she just sat and listened to the storm like any other person living an ordinary life. After they fell asleep, she went out onto the porch. The rain had eased to a mist. Across the road, porch lights glowed faintly, reflected in puddles. She whispered, "This is what survival sounds like," and smiled at how simple it was. Just air, water, distance, and her own steady pulse. Later, she packed the notebook away for good, sliding it into a box labeled Personal History and tucking it in the attic. She no longer needed it within reach. The next morning, she began a new notebook. Smaller, unlined, the kind used by artists. The first entry was short. Today the girls learned to count thunder. I didn't record the sound. I just listened. Then she set the pen down and let the page remain mostly blank. By September, the library planned another exhibition, this time on ordinary life. Marianne asked if Claire would contribute again. "Only if I don't have to explain anything," Claire said. "No titles, no captions," Marianne promised. "Just pictures." Claire smiled. "That I can do." When the exhibit opened, her photos hung along one wall. A child's hand holding a leaf, a coffee cup steaming in morning light, an empty porch after rain. No names, no stories. People stopped, looked, and moved on quietly. That was all she wanted, for her work to exist without needing to defend itself. That night, she drove home under a clear sky, windows open, cool air filling the car. The twins slept in the back again, the town lights fading behind her. For a long time, she didn't think of Fairview or Margaret or lawyers or anything that had once defined her, just the road ahead and the quiet hum of a life that finally no longer required evidence to prove it was real. Autumn returned with a gentleness she hadn't known could exist. The lights softened, the days shortened, and the air smelled faintly of apples and dry leaves. Claire walked the twins to preschool each morning through streets lined with gold and rust-colored trees. They crunched the leaves under their shoes and competed to find the loudest one. The small rituals of parenthood, the ones she'd once envied in strangers, had become the framework of her life. The library got busier as the weather cooled. People came in for warmth, quiet and routine, the same reasons she'd come once out of necessity. Now she greeted them by name. The community archive had grown into something bigger. Students scanning family photos, retirees recording oral histories, teenagers dropping off memory cards filled with random snapshots. It wasn't art or therapy. It was preservation of the ordinary, and Claire fit into it perfectly. In early October, Marianne stopped by her desk holding a printed flyer. "We're doing an end-of-year exhibit," she said. "The theme is continuity. You're part of it, right?" Claire hesitated. "Maybe, if I have something new." "You always do," Marianne said. "You just don't notice until someone points at it." That night, after the twins were asleep, Claire scrolled through the photos on her camera. Hundreds of small moments. The girls painting at the kitchen table, laundry blowing in the wind, sunlight on the porch railing. She realized she had stopped thinking about composition. Her hands simply lifted the camera when something felt right. She chose 12 images and sent them to Marianne with a short message. Use whichever fit the theme. They're all about continuity anyway. The next morning, she woke before dawn and walked outside with coffee. The yard was covered in mist. She stood barefoot on the porch, listening to the quiet hum of early morning. Nothing in her body waited for noise anymore. The silence didn't threaten, it invited. Later that day, while shelving books, a man approached her at the counter. "You're Claire, right?" he asked. "Yes." "I saw your photos last year," he said. "They were simple. I mean that as a compliment." "Simple is good," she said. He smiled awkwardly. "I run a small print shop. If you ever want to make cards or prints, I do it at cost. People like calm pictures these days." She thanked him, wrote down his number, and went back to stacking returns. But the idea lingered. That night, she sat at the kitchen table and thought about it. Not about business or ambition or recognition, just the possibility of making something that wasn't born from survival. Something she could hand to her daughters one day and say, "This came after." In mid-November, she printed a small batch of photos, 6 by 4 inches, thick matte paper. On the back of each, she stamped only one word, "Still." She didn't sell them. She gave them away, left a few at the library front desk, slipped one into Emily's mailbox, tucked one into a donated book. No signature, no contact information, just the image, existing quietly in someone else's day. Emily called the next week. "You've gone mysterious," she teased. "People are asking who made them." "I didn't make them," Claire said. "They just happened through me." Emily paused. "That's new." "Peace is new," Claire replied. As the holidays approached, the town hung lights along Main Street. The twins grew fascinated by them, pressing their faces to the car windows each evening to watch the glow blur and stretch. On Christmas Eve, Claire let them stay up past bedtime. They sat on the couch with mugs of warm milk and whispered guesses about gifts. Later, after she carried them to bed, she sat alone by the tree. No letters came that year, no reminders of the past. Only one card, from Janet, her lawyer, handwritten on plain stationery. "Hope you're still breathing easier. You earned it." She smiled, folded it into her notebook, and wrote one last entry for the year. Nothing extraordinary happened. No one tried to take anything from me. I didn't have to defend a single moment. That's what peace looks like. The invisible year. When January came again, it felt like a beginning rather than a continuation. She renewed her lease without hesitation, bought a new camera with her savings, and decided to start a small online page for her photos. No biography, no captions, just light and time. The page stayed anonymous, but slowly it grew. Strangers left brief comments. "Feels calm. Reminds me of home. Thank you." She didn't reply to any of them. The images didn't need her voice anymore. By March, she'd been invited to contribute to a small regional art magazine. The editor wrote, "Your work feels like recovery without words." She sent 5 photos and declined payment. She wasn't trying to build a career. She was marking her survival in plain sight. That spring, when the twins turned 3, they ran through the park with other children, their laughter clear and uncomplicated. Watching them, Claire realized she no longer feared what might come next. There would be mistakes, illnesses, money worries, the usual things, but not the kind that rewrote who she was. The foundation held. She thought of her father again that day, the way he used to repeat, "Fix what's in front of you, not what's behind you." Back then, she'd thought it was about carpentry. Now she understood it was about everything. That evening, she walked to the lake, the same one from her first weeks in Harlan. The water was calm, carrying the reflection of clouds and the slow movement of light. She took one photo, then another, then lowered the camera. Enough. When she returned home, she found the twins asleep on the couch, a picture book open between them. She carried them to bed, then stood for a moment in their doorway, watching their steady breathing. At the kitchen table, she opened a fresh notebook. Not the old one, not the artist's one, but a new one entirely. On the first page, she wrote, "There's no evidence left to keep, no record to defend, only continuity to tend. Life remains still, and still is enough." She closed the cover, placed it beside her camera, and turned off the light. Outside, the night was windless. The house held its own silence, familiar and kind. The sound of nothing breaking, of nothing hidden, of everything finally belonging exactly where it was. Spring deepened into summer again, the third since she had left Fairview. The twins were 4 now, restless, curious, alive in a way that made every quiet moment feel like a small miracle. They filled the house with the noise of crayons and stories, their laughter spilling into every room that once echoed with silence. The sound no longer startled her. It healed. The house had become a different kind of archive, not of documents or proof, but of days. On the fridge hung drawings, uneven hearts, stick figures with bright hair, crooked suns. Beside them, grocery lists and reminders, evidence of a normal life. On one shelf stood her father's old photo of the lake, framed simply, no caption. It wasn't a symbol anymore, just a picture of still water. Claire had started teaching a small class at the library once a week. Not photography, but visual journaling. People came with phones, sketchbooks, or nothing at all. She told them, "You don't need a perfect picture. You just need to notice what's real." They listened, then filled pages with ordinary things. The way light hit their kitchen sink, the shape of a neighbor's shadow. She liked watching them learn what had taken her years to understand. That stillness is not absence, it's evidence of safety. One evening, after class, Marianne handed her a thick envelope. "From the Regional Archive," she said. "They're featuring community projects. You've been nominated for their Preservation Award." Claire frowned slightly. "For what?" "For turning recovery into record," Marianne said. "You gave silence form." Claire smiled. "Then let it stay silent. I don't need a plaque." Marianne shrugged. "Then don't accept it. But keep the letter. Someday your daughters will want to know what you built." That night, Claire read the letter once, folded it neatly, and slid it into a drawer next to Janet's old Christmas card. Some things didn't need display. They just needed to exist. In early June, she drove the twins to the coast. It was their first real vacation. 2 nights at a small rented cabin near the ocean. The drive took hours, the car filled with songs, snacks, and the steady rhythm of tires on asphalt. When they finally reached the shoreline, the twins ran ahead, laughing into the wind, their footprints vanishing behind them as the tide crept in. Claire stood still, the sound of the ocean wrapping around her. The horizon was endless, but she no longer felt small against it. She took a photo, not for art, not for memory, just out of habit. Then she lowered the camera and closed her eyes. The wind brushed her hair, salt on her lips. The world didn't demand anything from her. It simply continued. That night, after the twins fell asleep, she sat outside the cabin with a notebook on her lap. The moonlight was bright enough to write by. She began slowly, her handwriting unhurried, steady. The story began in a house that wasn't mine and ends wherever I choose to stop remembering. I used to think survival was resistance. Now I know it's maintenance, of calm, of truth, of love that asks for nothing in return. She paused, then wrote another line. Every generation deserves to begin without inheriting someone else's silence. She looked at the ocean, black and breathing. Somewhere behind her, the twins shifted in their sleep. The sound made her chest tighten with something close to peace. The next morning, they collected seashells and packed them into a jar, not as souvenirs, but as proof that beauty didn't need meaning. On the drive back, the girls sang until they fell asleep. The highway shimmered in the afternoon heat, long and straight and open. Back in Harlan, life slipped back into its quiet rhythm. The library closed for renovation that month, giving Claire unexpected time off. She spent it repainting the house. Soft cream walls, light curtains, small changes that felt like new beginnings. One afternoon, she found the old box marked personal history in the attic. Dust had settled thick on the lid. She carried it down, opened it on the porch, and went through the contents one last time. The first notebook, court documents, photographs. She read the early pages briefly, recognizing the handwriting but not the woman who had written it. Without hesitation, she took out the first notebook, the one full of evidence and fear, and tore it in half. The paper shredded easily. She placed the pieces in the fireplace, lit a match, and watched them curl into ash. The smoke rose quietly, disappearing through the chimney into the sky. She didn't film it. She didn't photograph it. She just watched until the fire died, swept the ash into a small envelope, and buried it under the tree outside. The act was not symbolic. It was practical. Some things belonged to the ground. That night, after the twins were asleep, she opened her current notebook, the one that started in calmness. She wrote, "I have no more records to keep. Every proof I ever needed is breathing under this roof. What's left of me is steady, ordinary, and alive." She closed it, placed it on the bedside table, and looked around the dim room. The walls no longer held shadows. The air no longer remembered arguments. Before turning off the light, she whispered, almost to herself, "It's over, Dad. You'd have liked it here." The lamp clicked. Darkness filled the room, soft and even. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees, and the house settled into its quiet rhythm. Not tense, not waiting, just existing. In the morning, sunlight spilled across the floor, catching the glass jar of seashells on the shelf. The girls came running, barefoot, shouting her name, their voices bright. She turned toward them and smiled, not for the camera, not for evidence, not for memory, just because she could. And that was the end. Not of a story, but of recording one.